45% of homeowners who renovate will blow past their budget.
Which is just, wow, it is a staggering number.
Right. I mean, nearly half of all people who start a project end up spending way more than they planned.
Oh, yeah. And the craziest part is that the disaster does not happen when the walls actually get torn down.
No, not at all. It happens, months earlier, right at their kitchen table.
Exactly. When you look at the research we pulled for this deep dive, that 45% figure just jumps right off the page.
It really does. The financial pain for these homeowners is very real. And they often do not realize they are in trouble until it is far too late to stop the bleeding.
Yeah, which is exactly why we are doing this deep dive today.
For sure. Welcome to the show. As editors at the Renology magazine, we are constantly looking at the data, and today we are looking at a stack of sources, including the latest Remodeling magazine cost versus value report.
So that's some great data from the National Association of Home Builders.
Right. And our mission today is really simple. We are mastering the home renovation order of operations.
Because the goal is to keep you, the listener, in total control of your project, rather than letting the project control you.
Exactly. We are going to focus entirely on pre-construction decisions because, honestly, that is where the battle is actually won or lost.
That is right. But, before we get into the strategy of how to manage a renovation, we really need to ground this conversation in reality.
Yes, we do. We need to talk about what these projects actually cost right now.
Because we pulled the data for early 2026, and the numbers are... well, they are substantial.
Very substantial. The financial stakes are very high. So you need to know exactly what you are walking into.
Yeah, let us walk through those specific numbers so everyone listening knows exactly what kind of budget conversations they need to be prepared for.
Okay, let us start with a mid-range minor kitchen remodel.
Right, and just to clarify, we are not talking about a gut renovation here.
No, this is a refresh. Think cabinet refacing, maybe some new quartz countertops, and updated appliances.
Nationally, the median cost for that in early 2026 is between $28,000 and $45,000.
And that is just a minor refresh. Like, what happens when we want to change the footprint and tear down a wall?
Well, then you move into a mid-range major kitchen remodel.
Which is a whole different ballgame.
It is. This is where you are actively changing the layout, installing entirely new custom cabinetry, and moving plumbing or electrical lines.
And the national median for that jumps up significantly, right?
Oh, yeah. It lands between $75,000 and $95,000.
Wow. Those are serious numbers. Okay, what about bathrooms?
So a mid-range bathroom remodel will run you between $25,000 and $38,000.
But wait, that assumes you're keeping the toilet and shower in their existing plumbing locations, right?
Exactly. Moving pipes adds a massive premium.
Oh, for sure.
And if you are dreaming of an upscale primary suite addition, meaning a full-scale footprint expansion with high-end finishes, you are looking at $175,000 to well over $350,000.
I want to clarify something for you listening. These numbers might start a bit lower if you are in, say, a smaller condo unit.
Right, or if your scope of work is incredibly limited.
Yeah, but for a standard single-family home, these are the baseline figures.
They are the baseline. And the only key to staying on the lower end of those specific ranges is rigid upfront planning.
Because starting a renovation without a meticulous plan is like handing a blank check to a stranger.
Oh, definitely.
Actually, I like to compare it to calling up a travel agent and asking, how much does a vacation cost?
Right, which is an impossible question.
Exactly. The agent cannot possibly answer that. They need to know if you are pitching a tent in the woods with a can of baked beans, or if you are booking a 5-star luxury resort in the Maldives with a private butler.
That is a perfect way to look at it. You simply cannot expect accurate pricing from anyone without giving them exact specifics.
Contractors are not mind readers.
No, they are not. If you just ask for a nice new kitchen, they have to guess what kind of kitchen you want, and their guess is never going to match your expectation.
Because these baseline costs for 2026 are already so significant, we need to figure out exactly where these projects jump the tracks financially.
Right. And looking at the sources, it seems the fundamental issue is that people completely misunderstand the actual timeline of a renovation.
But the core misconception here is so fascinating to me.
It really is. Most homeowners think the renovation sequence is entirely about physical construction.
Right. They visualize the timeline as demolition, followed by framing, then rough-in plumbing and electrical.
Then insulation, and finally drywall.
The sledgehammers and power tools, like the dramatic reveals you see on television.
Exactly. But that is the contractor's timeline. The sequence that actually saves you money is the decision sequence.
Right.
The most critical work of your entire renovation happens at your kitchen table with spreadsheets and sample boards, not on a job site with a nail gun.
So what does that actual planning timeline look like? Because I think most people severely underestimate how much time they need to spend at that kitchen table.
They drastically underestimate it. The planning phase, which goes from your very first initial ideas all the way to having approved city permits in your hand, should often take much longer than the actual construction itself.
Wow.
Yeah, if you were doing a major kitchen or a primary bath remodel, you should expect 3 to 6 months of pure planning.
Let me stop you right there and push back on that a little bit. 3 to 6 months just to plan.
Just to plan.
I mean, if I am paying a premium for a contractor, I want to see action. Why in the world does planning take up to half a year?
It is a common reaction.
Right, like why can I not just have the contractor start tearing down the cabinets and I will just run out and pick my floor tile while they're putting up the drywall? That seems way more efficient to me.
Well, it sounds efficient in theory, but it is actually the single biggest trap in the entire industry.
Really?
Yes. And the reason for that comes down to one word: allowances.
Okay, let us unpack this mechanism. What exactly is an allowance and why is it so dangerous?
So when you force a contractor to bid on vague ideas, like saying you want nice tile but you refuse to pick the exact one before they start, they use an allowance.
Okay,
An allowance is basically a financial placeholder in the contract.
I see.
Giving a contractor an allowance is like giving your teenager your credit card and saying to buy a reasonable pair of shoes without defining what reasonable means.
Oh, that sounds like a recipe for disaster.
It is. You are legally on the hook for whatever happens next.
Now, so how does that play out in real life on a project?
Let us say the contractor writes in a $3,000 tile allowance. That seems totally fine to you on paper.
Here.
But then, 2 weeks into demolition, you go to the tile store, and the tile you actually fall in love with costs $7,000.
And just like that, you are $4,000 over budget, and the walls are not even closed up yet.
Precisely. And it only cascades from there.
Wow.
We looked at the data from the National Association of Home Builders. They recommend that homes over 30 years old need a 10 to 15% contingency budget, just for hidden surprises behind the walls.
Like mold or structural damage.
But here's the brutal truth. Poor planning and relying on generic allowances will burn through that entire 10 to 15% contingency before the drywall is even installed.
That is terrifying. You will have zero safety net left for actual emergencies.
Exactly.
That makes total sense. Allowances are the ultimate budget killers.
They really are.
So if we know allowances are dangerous, the obvious solution is that you have to finalize every single finished material before getting a bid.
Yes.
But reading through the research, this is especially critical given the current 2026 economic landscape. Why is 2026 so unforgiving?
Well, the macroeconomic environment this year is highly specific. When we analyze the market for 2026, we see that interest rates have finally stabilized.
Which is good news, right?
It is good news, but they remain noticeably higher than homeowners were used to a few years ago.
Which fundamentally changes the math on how people pay for these projects.
It changes it entirely. Financing tools like cash-out refinances and home equity lines of credit, commonly known as ELO eggs, are much more expensive to carry now.
Right.
If you were planning to finance this with a ELO SC, your monthly payment on borrowed money is vastly different today than it was in 2021.
I imagine that puts immense, unrelenting pressure on maintaining a tight budget.
Oh, definitely. You do not have the luxury of just borrowing a little extra at a rock-bottom rate to cover your massive tile allowance mistake.
So the margin for error is effectively gone.
It is completely gone.
And it is not just the cost of borrowing money. It is getting the actual physical materials into the house. What did the data say regarding the supply chain right now?
But the extreme chaos of the early 2020s has mostly subsided.
Yeah.
You're not waiting a year for a standard refrigerator anymore.
That is a relief.
It is. However, specific categories are still very stubborn. High-performance windows and high-end appliances consistently require 3 to 6 months of lead time.
3 to 6 months.
Yeah, you literally must order these items the exact moment your design is finalized, or your entire project will sit completely stalled.
Just with a gaping hole in your house waiting on a delivery truck.
Exactly.
And there are policy factors at play now, too, things that dictate what we should be putting in our homes.
Yes, a major factor in 2026 is the Inflation Reduction Act, the IRA. It continues to offer major federal tax credits for energy-efficient upgrades.
We are talking about heat pumps, induction cooktops, and the electrical panel upgrades required to run them, right?
Correct.
Let us talk about why that matters mechanically, because switching to an induction cooktop and a heat pump requires massive amounts of electricity.
It does.
Most older homes only have 100-amp electrical panels. If you try to run a new heat pump and an induction stove at the same time on an old panel, you will literally blow a fuse.
You definitely will.
So upgrading to a 200-amp panel is the necessary mechanism to support these upgrades, which is why the tax credits incentivize doing it all at once.
Exactly. And a smart planning sequence integrates these specific mechanical upgrades very early in the design process to maximize your financial incentives.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, a full kitchen remodel is the ideal time to swap to induction and upgrade your panel while the walls are already open.
It is like writing a hyper-specific grocery list for a chef. You cannot just write down paint and metal trim on a piece of paper and hand it to a builder.
No, you cannot.
You have to specify your choices down to the exact brand. Like you have to tell them you want Benjamin Moore Chantilly lace paint and you want Schluter brand shower profiles.
Yes.
Because that is the only way the contractor can give you a fixed price bid instead of a wild guess.
That is the exact level of detail required. The brand, the color code, the finish, everything.
But wait. If I am going to all the trouble of picking out the exact Schluter profiles and the specific Chantilly lace paint, why should I not just buy those materials myself?
That is a very common question.
Because it seems like it would be much cheaper for me to act as my own purchasing agent to save a few bucks.
It seems that way, but our data shows it's usually a terrible idea. It is much better to let the general contractor purchase the materials.
Really? Why is that? I assume they mark the prices up, so why am I paying them to do my shopping?
Sometimes they do mark it up, but contractors get significant trade discounts that you do not have access to as a consumer.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, which often balances out the cost. But more importantly, you are paying them to handle the delivery logistics and the warranties.
Okay, walk me through that.
Think about the mechanism of delivery. If a massive pallet of tile arrives shattered at your house, the contractor deals with the supplier to get a replacement.
Oh, I see.
If you bought it yourself, you are the one sitting on the phone fighting with a customer service bot.
All while your tile installer is standing in your bathroom charging you by the hour to do nothing.
Exactly. That sounds like an expensive nightmare, right?
It truly does.
It is. Buying materials yourself often causes major coordination problems and warranty disputes that easily erase any upfront savings you thought you had. Furthermore, many contractors will simply add an overhead and handling fee to the materials you provide anyway.
Because they still have to assume the risk of storing them and moving them around the job site safely.
Exactly.
Okay, so let us say the homeowner has painstakingly selected every specific material. We have navigated the 2026 financial landscape and the supply chain.
Right.
Now we need a mechanism to legally lock those choices in with the builder. And that leads us to the single most important part of the pre-construction phase.
The scope of work document.
Yes, the scope of work document and how to properly vet your contractor.
The scope of work is the ultimate document. It is the single most critical piece of paper for keeping your project on time and on budget.
It really is.
It is the formal contract that lists exactly what is being built, what mechanisms are being used, and what specific materials are going into the house.
So to make sure this document actually protects you, the homeowner, our sources highlight 3 essential questions every single person must ask a contractor before signing anything.
Yes, these are crucial.
Let us walk through these 3 questions, and more importantly, let us unpack what a good answer actually sounds like. What is a first question?
The first essential question you need to ask your potential contractor is this. Can you walk me through the scope of work line by line and confirm it includes every single material I have selected?
Why is that specific phrasing so important? Like, why do we need a line-by-line review?
Because this forces a highly detailed review and confirms there are no generic allowances hiding in the fine print.
Right.
It ensures the final price actually reflects your specific choices. You want to know they priced out the exact James Hardie Color Plus siding you selected, not some generic equivalent that fades in 3 years.
So if I sit down and ask a contractor that question, what does a great answer sound like?
A good contractor will confidently reference specific items from your list. They will point to the contract and say something like, let us look at page 3. Line item 12 is for the dull-tile keystones mosaic for the shower floor, model D017. And we have accounted for 45 square feet plus a 15% overage for waste.
Oh, that overage detail is crucial.
It is.
It shows they understand the mechanics of cutting and installing tile, where pieces inevitably break. That level of detail is exactly what you want to hear.
Definitely.
Okay, what is the second essential question?
The second question is, what is your process for a change order, and how are the costs calculated?
Because changes are going to happen no matter how much we plan at the kitchen table.
Exactly. You might open a wall and find severe termite damage. Or you might genuinely change your mind about a light fixture once you see the room taking shape.
Right, that happens all the time.
It does. You need to know the financial and timeline implications before those changes occur. A clear, documented process is the only way to prevent surprise bills at the end of the project.
And what should the contractor say to that? How do we know their process is legitimate?
A professional contractor will explain that all changes must be submitted in writing, often through a dedicated project management app on your phone.
Okay, an app makes sense.
Yeah, and they will explain the mechanism of how they price out the new labor and materials, add their standard 20% overhead and profit margin, and then present you with a fixed price change order for your approval.
So it is all very transparent.
Yes, and they should explicitly state that no new work will proceed until that digital document is signed by you.
I love that approach. It takes all the emotion and arguing out of the equation. It just becomes a math problem at that point.
Precisely.
All right, what is the third question we need to ask?
The third question is, what are the key inspection milestones for this project that require a sign-off from the city?
This one feels like a secret test to see if they actually pull local permits.
It is definitely a test. It confirms your contractor truly understands the local permitting process and has formally built those inspection delays into their master schedule.
That is smart.
It proves they are a professional and will not be cutting corners behind the drywall that could haunt you when you try to sell the house in 10 years.
So what are the specific milestones we want them to list? If I am renovating an entire house, what should I hear?
Good answers include a foundation inspection, also a framing inspection right after the rough-in is complete.
And just to clarify for everyone listening, rough-in is that vulnerable stage where all your new plumbing pipes and electrical wires are installed in the walls, but before the drywall covers them up.
Yes. The city needs to see that work.
Right.
They should also list an insulation inspection and finally, a final inspection to secure the certificate of occupancy.
Which is the city officially declaring the space safe to live in.
Correct. They should also confirm that they manage all the scheduling with the city and will be physically on site to meet the inspector every single time.
Let me ask you a hypothetical question because I feel like this happens all the time.
Right.
Say I am interviewing a contractor who is highly recommended by my neighbor. I ask him about his change order process, and he gives me a really vague answer.
Uh-oh.
He says, "Oh, we just figure it out as we go. We are flexible. Do not worry about it." Honestly, my instinct might be to trust him because the neighbor loves him. It sounds so much easier than dealing with lawyers and apps. Why should I not just go with the flow? Is that a red flag?
It is a massive red flag.
Really? Even with a glowing recommendation?
Yes. A clear, legally binding process is the only way to prevent disputes. Think about the shift in leverage.
What do you mean?
When a contractor says they will just figure it out as they go, what they're really saying is that they hold all the leverage once your kitchen is completely demolished.
Oh, wow, because you have a giant hole in your house.
Exactly. You have no mechanism to dispute their pricing when they hand you a handwritten bill for extra work.
That is scary.
The old school handshake works wonderfully, right up until it becomes a $10,000 disagreement.
That makes a lot of sense. The power dynamic completely shifts the second the sledgehammers come out.
It really does.
This all loops back to the core lesson we found in the research today.
Yeah.
The chaos of construction is managed entirely by the discipline of pre-construction. Every single hour you spend at your desk finalizing the scope of work and the material list before a contract is signed is going to save you 10 hours of stress and thousands of dollars later on.
All true.
The single most important part of the renovation is the part with no dust.
That is the core truth of this entire deep dive. Get the planning right, and the rest will naturally follow.
Absolutely. Wait, for sure. So if you are listening to this and you are ready to start your own project, here is our actionable advice for this week.
Before you call a single contractor, you must sit down and clearly define your goals and your hard budget limit. Figure out exactly what problem you are trying to solve in your home.
And then you have to decide who to hire first based on your specific needs.
Correct. The sequence of who you hire is just as important as the sequence of the build.
Right.
If your project involves changing the floor plan, adding square footage, or moving structural walls, your first call should be to an architect.
But if you are strictly doing cosmetic updates with complex tile designs and custom finishes, you might want to start with an interior designer.
Yes. Once you have a complete, highly specific plan from either of them, then you take that package to a design build firm or a general contractor to get a real bid.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final provocative thought to ponder this week.
Okay.
If meticulous planning is the ultimate defense against budget overruns, consider conducting a renovation pre-mortem with your household this weekend.
A pre-mortem. I like where this is going. How does that work mechanically?
Well, you sit down at the kitchen table, pour a cup of coffee, and imagine it is exactly 1 year from today. Imagine the renovation you are planning was a total financial disaster.
Okay. Sounds a bit grim, but go on.
Right, so imagine it went 30% over budget and finished 4 months late. I want you to work backward from that imaginary disaster to identify the specific communication breakdowns or rushed decisions that caused the failure.
Oh, that is a great exercise.
Did you rush the cabinet choice? Did you fail to clarify the plumbing allowance in the contract?
Did you buy your own materials to save a buck and ruin the schedule?
Exactly. Find those vulnerabilities in your plan right now and solve them today before a single hammer is ever lifted.
Identify the failure before it happens so you can engineer it out of the process.
That is it, because as we said at the start, if you get the sequence right, you control the project. If you get it wrong, the project controls you. Plan the work, then work the plan. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and we will see you next time.